Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is part 5 for Kubernetes crash course for .NET developers. In the part 1 we discussed about Kubernetes architectures. Part 2 we created Nginx pod and then we created .NET Web API pod through deployments. And in the part 3 we discuss about the service and like different services, cluster IP, load balancers, noteboard, etc. And then in the part 4, we created a multi-container .NET Core Web API applications. So uh, we added the Postgres database pod container and the Web API container in the same pod. And then we found there's one issue if we are increasing the replica more than one, and if we are trying to access that data, then because each pod is having a different database, so we found some data inconsistency issue as well. And in this part 5 today, we are going to change that and we will move our database to the separate different pod, and then we will see how can we can connect from make a connection between one pod to another pod. So basically we are going to use, because pod can be live and die, right? We discussed earlier. So we cannot make a direct connections between the pods from one pod to different pod, because that can live and die, and each time whenever the pod is going to create, it will have new IP. So we discussed the concept about the service, and to the expose the service, we created a load balancer service. So this time basically we will, instead of load balancer, because database we don't want to expose, only our application inside the cluster, our applications wants to connect that database pod. So this time we will create a cluster IP service for that connections. And second thing which we are going to do is we hard coded few configuration for database. So instead of hard coding that things, there is a concept called ConfigMap, where we can store our configurations in the Kubernetes. So we will create a config map for that, and then we will, instead of hard code values, we will read that values from config maps. So let's start. So first, maybe let's do some cleanup and delete all the services and pods what we are having in my current namespace. So let me run kubectl get pods command, so we can see that few pods I am having, and kubectl get service command, so we can say few service as well we are having. So let's delete our service end pod. So we created this service end pod with this file, right? This is our file, which is this one file is having our deployment configuration and our service configurations. So instead of, if you want to delete both the things, instead of manually deleting, what we can do that, instead of keeping apply here, I will say delete, and then I can give the file name. So whatever the resource I have in this my YAML file, that will be deleted automatically. So let's run this. So we can see that our deployment and service is deleted. Now let's run get pods command again. So we can see that this 3 pod is in the terminating status, and this 3 is still in the running status, which we created in our one of the previous video. And let's run kubectl get service command. So there's a one more service still running because we created it in one of our videos. So let's delete this service as well. So I will say kubectl delete .NET service, sorry, delete. Then I need to define the resource type. So I will say delete service. So my service is deleted. Then let's list out all the deployments. kubectl get deployments. Oh, deployment. So this is one deployment we are having. So let's delete this deployment as well. So I will say kubectl delete deployment, and then I can give this deployment name. Now let's clear everything and let's run kubectl all command. Why I am missing? It should be kubectl get all. So it will list out all the resources. So we can see that there is a one service we are having, and this pod is in the terminating status. After some time, this pod will not be available. So we are done with the cleanup step. Now let's move to our YAML file. So previously, if you remember, this is a deployment file we created, and we have defined both of, because we are running both the containers in the same pod. So under this containers, we have added this our .NET Core Web API container as well as Postgres container. Now in this video, what we are going to do is we are going to create a separate pod for that, and pod can be created through deployment, right? So I will create a separate deployment for this Postgres. So maybe I can copy this. Let me copy this. To add new resources, I need to add this 3 dash here and then paste it here. Now let's move to first deployment. So I will change this name to only KTS deployment. Hello KTS deployment. And this labels I will not change here. Image I will not change. Port I will not change. Environment variable I will not change. But I am going to remove this second container because we are going to move this to the second deployment. So let's remove all of this. So now we are having only one container and their environment variables. So we did not change anything, only we just renamed this, and then we just removed the Postgres uh, image and other stuffs, right? Now in the second deployments, I will rename this even with the like Postgres. I will say Postgres deployment, and here also I will change these labels to Postgres. Let me copy this and I will replace this with this mesh labels and even here as well. And replica I will keep as a 1 now for Postgres. And in the containers now we can remove our Web API container because this is deployment is only for our database. So let me remove all of this. So now we are having only our database container. So far so good. There is a one more change because now if you will observe we have one port for our Web API, one port for our Postgres. So now it is in the different port, it will have different IP. So if I will add localhost, then my database will not work, right? So how can I make a connections with my Web API port through database port? Yes, correct. We discuss about the service concept. So we need one service which will make a connection between our database and this deployment. So let's create one more service here. Let's copy this service. This service we created to expose our web API, right? And another service which we are creating to make a connection between our web API and Postgres database. So let's copy this and paste it here. Kind is service only. Here I will say hello. Instead of kubernetes service, I will say postgres service. And selector, this time you need to make sure selectors you are giving the same what you have mentioned here. So let me copy and paste it here. This selector should match, then only your service discovery will work. And port, because we know uh, that Postgres run on 5432, so I will change this port to 5432 and even this also 5432. In type, we don't want load balancer because we don't want to expose our database. It is needed only inside the container. So maybe I can add cluster IP in the type, or if I will remove, then also default type will be a cluster IP type. So maybe I will remove this and let's save this. So now we are done with all the steps to separating out our uh, Postgres container to a different pod. So let's review this again. So this is one deployment for our web API, another deployment for our Postgres. Then there is one service to connect our web API through Postgres, and this another service to expose our web API. And one thing I missed is like here we added a local host, and as we understood, like we cannot connect through localhost when we are having a different pods because that will have different IP address. So instead of localhost, this time when I'm creating a service, I can add this service name here. So maybe I will copy this service name and replace this localhost with the service name. Great. So now let's move to our terminal. Let's run kubectl get all command again. So this time we can see that we are only having a one cluster IP service for Kubernetes and we don't have any other resources. So let's clear this. And here I am going to run kubectl apply command to apply the resources what we have mentioned here in this file. So let me run this kubectl apply and then f and then file name and hit enter. So we can see that our hello kubernetes deployment, that is for our web API, is created. Hello Postgres deployment, that is for our Postgres database, is created. Hello Postgres service to make a connection between API and database is created. And hello kubernetes service to expose our web API service is created. Now let's run kubectl get pods command. So we can see that even my three web API pods are up and running and my database is also up and running. Now let's run kubectl get service command. So we can see that my one hello Postgres service which is having type of cluster IP is created successfully, and my hello kubernetes service which is type of load balancer to expose our web API is also available. Now another thing which we need to do is we need to tell to minikube like I want to expose my service and this is my service, right? So I will say minikube service and then I can give the name of my service which I want to expose. So I will say hello kubernetes service. So let me copy this and paste it here. So once I will run execute this step, then minikube will give the separate URL to me to access my web API. So this is a URL created through minikube. Let me try to access this. Now let's run swagger index.html. Let's hit enter. Now I'm going to post few employees. Maybe I will say 1 1 and execute this. I received 200. Now let's add 2 2 execute. Then I received 200, and let me add one more 3 3 execute. I received 200 response. Now let's try to run this get 10 point, and I can see the result. Now earlier when we were having a different port for different database, we were seeing database inconsistency when we opened the our application in the incognito in the different browser. So let's try this time if we are seeing any data inconsistency or we are seeing the correct data. So let me try to execute this so I can see the right response. I even let me try to add one more record from this window as well. So I will say 4 4 and execute this. So I received 200. Now let me try to execute this get endpoint again so I can see this new response. And now let me go back, and here if I will run execute, so I can see this new record 4 is created, and I don't see any data inconsistency when I try to access the database with the different browser as well. So our first issue is resolved. Now we are going to work for reading values from ConfigMap. So in the ConfigMap, you can store your non-confidential values, informations, configurations in the key value forms. So what we are going to do, let's move back, and here if you will see in our deployment files, we are having this username, password and database. So and even this host. So what we will do, all this informations we will like, or maybe we can do one thing, we can move this complete connection strings to a config map, and then we can read that connection strings from config map. So we will do that things. Maybe we will move this complete connection string in the config map, and instead of hard coding and reading it, we will read it from config map. So let's same similar way as we did earlier. Let's try to search config map Kubernetes documentations. So if I will search Kubernetes config map, so I received this config maps documentations here. And if you will open this, so we can find the examples for creating a config map and then using that in the pod. So let me copy this, and because we are creating only just one value, so let me copy only this thing. Let's move back to our YAML file. Let's come at the bottom, and to add new resources I need to add the 3 dash here, and let's paste it here. So here, like previously we were having a kind of deployment service, When we are creating a config map, then kind will be a config map. And in the metadata, we can give the config map name. Maybe I will say hello KTS demo. And here we can give the key and value. In the key and value form, we can give define our values. So this is my, not this one, let's move up. So this is my connection strings. So let's copy this and here I will paste it here, and I will say maybe employee DB connection. So yeah, this way we can create and define our config map and then key in with the data, what configuration we are going to store. So this is done. Now how can we read it? So if you will move to these documentations, and here we can see that like when we added the value, instead of we need to say like value from and then config map reference and then this key. So let's copy this, and here let me paste it. So we are giving value from, then it is coming from config maps, and this name I should give the my config map name. So what name we have defined for our config map? It is hello KTS demo. So let me copy this name and paste it here, and let's copy this key. So we have defined our config map file name and then what key we are going to refer to get the values. So this is a config name, and under this config name we are having this is a key which we want to read to get the value for my connection string. So we are done with this. And another thing which I want to share, if you want to add the comments in your YAML file, then you can use this hash symbol and then you can add the comments. So anything after that can be added as a comment. Now let's move to our terminal. Let's close this. Let me clear this, and let's run kubectl apply command again. So we made some changes in the deployment, so we can see that deployment is configured. We did not make any changes in the Postgres deployment, so we can see that it is unchanged. We did not make any changes in Postgres service, so it is unchanged. We did not make any changes in the KTS service, so we can see that it is unchanged. And we created this config map, so hello KTS demo. This has been created. And if I will run kubectl get config map, so we can see that this new config map hello KTS demo is created. And now let's run kube ctl get pods. So my all pods in the running status. Now let's run kubectl get service, and let's tell our minikube to I want to run this service. So I will say minikube service, and then I can give this service name. And let's try to access this. Swagger, then index.html, and let's try to run this get command. So we can see that still we are able to connect it and we are seeing the same data. And let me try to post something new. I will say 5 5 and execute. So I received 200. Let's try to run this get command again so I can see this new response. And let me open new terminal and let's see again what all we created. So I will run kubectl get all command. So this time we can see that this is a basically 3 port for our web API, this 1 port for our database, then this one service we are having to expose this Swagger. We are seeing this here, right? So this is service for that. This service for making a connection between the pod and database. And here there's a 2 deployment, right? So one deployment is for our API, another deployment is for Postgres. So that's all for this video. And before we end this video, let's have a quick knowledge check what we have learned in this video. So you will see a few questions and you will see options for that. And you can stop that video and add your answer in the comment box, or you will get 10 seconds to think and answer. So anything is fine, but I prefer if you will stop and think and then write your answer in the comment box. That will be good. So let's start. So question 1 is, what does this highlighted section refers to? So here we can see that value from, then config map key from, and then we can see this name hello k8s demo. So this highlighted sections hello k8s demo is refer for what? Is it a config map name? Is it a config map key? Is it a service name, or it's just a static key? So you have 10 seconds to answer this and your time starts now. So your time up, and the correct answer is config map name. Now let's move to the next question. And here we can see almost same image, and it is asking what does this highlighted sections refers to? And previously we asked for hello k8s demo. This time we are asking for employee DB connections. So what these highlighted sections refer for? Number one option is all of these options. Number two is it's just a static key. Number three is config map name. This is a config map name, or it could be a config map data key. So you have 10 seconds to answer these questions, and your time starts now. Time up. So correct answer is this is a config map data key. So remember we added this data key to, and we added our connection strings under that. Now moving to the next sections. And this is having only two options, and question is if service type is cluster IP, we can access the service outside of cluster. Is it true or false? So think of this, and you have 10 seconds to answer this, and your time starts now. So correct answer is false. Because if service type is cluster IP, so remember we are for our Postgres database to make a connection with the web API, we created a service type that was the cluster IP service type, and that is only accessible inside the cluster. We cannot access outside. So what service type we can access outside the cluster? If you know it, give that answer also in the comment box. And that's all for this video. If you like this video, please don't forget to hit the like button. If you have not subscribed it yet, please subscribe and please share with your friends. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.